name is Mad and welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here today. I wanted to make a video today based on something that is deeply personal to me and very important, and that is my journey with myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or mEDS. And now, just as a disclaimer, I do have some notes over here as I do have a horrendous memory and would have a hard time hitting all the points that I deem important for this video without it. So if you just see me looking over here, that's all I'm doing. As well as this is all based on my personal experience and the research that I have been able to do. So this is in no way any type of medical advice. It is simply to raise awareness and build community. For those of you who may not be familiar with mEDS, it is a rare connective tissue disorder that affects the muscles, joints, and skin, as well as many other parts of the body, as connective tissue is everywhere. It has been a big part of my life, and I wanted to give an overview of my journey to diagnosis and some of the diagnostic criteria and how my symptoms relate to that. Whether you're here because you have mEDS yourself, a different type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or connective tissue disorder, or you're simply curious, thank you for being here. I hope this video brings that awareness and understanding for a disorder that is commonly overlooked. So I will be talking about my experiences, the highs, the lows, and everything in between on this channel. I will be making more videos on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and just some other videos I'm interested in on this channel in the future. So let's just dive into this video. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS, is a group of 13 inheritable connective tissue disorders. These conditions are caused by genetic changes in the code for making connective tissue. So you'll see some features that are commonly seen across all types of EDS, which include things like joint hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility. However, each type of EDS does have its own set of features and diagnostic criteria. Because the symptoms can range from mild to severe, EDS is often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. Diagnosis typically includes a combination of clinical examination, family history, and genetic testing to identify the specific type of EDS if there is suspicion for EDS at all. I have had medical issues my entire life. However, when I was in 8th grade, I started having a lot more severe symptoms, things that we could not just ignore. It started with pretty severe gastrointestinal issues, and it just kind of snowballed into different syndromes that I was being diagnosed with and having a wide variety of symptoms. The complexity of my symptoms kind of left everyone confused, as they all didn't point to one singular diagnosis, or so we thought. They didn't quite align in a way that made any sense to a lot of healthcare providers, as at the time that I was being diagnosed with, at the time that I was having these symptoms, EDS was not a well-known genetic disorder. Many physicians were not aware of it. So I was left without a diagnosis for many years. But as fate would have it, several years after I had my first major symptoms appear, my childhood best friend was diagnosed with hypermobility type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or HEDS. This led us to wonder if my symptoms could also point to a diagnosis of EDS, and so I sought care at Children's Hospital Colorado in their genetics clinic, where I was initially diagnosed with HEDS. At that time, genetic testing seemed to be unnecessary. It was very costly, and my providers were quite certain that I fit the criteria for HEDS, particularly with the symptoms that I had and the family history on my mother's side. So for many years, I did believe that I had hypermobility type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I focused on managing the symptoms associated with it. However, a few years ago, my sister started experiencing symptoms similar to me, and so I advised her to seek an appointment with a geneticist as well, as I did suspect that she had EDS. Unfortunately, her condition worsened more rapidly than mine, as I do have a relatively minor or mild case of EDS, and for that I'm very grateful for. But she was diagnosed with HEDS as well. Given that her symptoms were a little bit more severe and different in some ways that are not seen in a typical hypermobility type case, her doctor began to suspect that she might have a different type of EDS rather than just the hypermobility type EDS. So a few months ago, she underwent genetic testing, which included a broad range of tests, but in specifically, we're looking at the genes that are known to cause the other types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. To our complete surprise, the results came back positive for a mutation in the COL12A1 gene, confirming the diagnosis of myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in the family. So that is how we got diagnosed as a family group with the myopathic type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now I would like to walk you through some of the diagnostic criteria aside from genetic testing that may lead to a suspicion of a different type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or in specific myopathic type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I'm going to display on the screen for reference the diagnostic criteria from the Ehlers-Danlos Society, as well as speaking it out loud and explaining a little bit about how my symptoms relate to the diagnostic criteria. So in addition to that positive genetic test, a person must meet specific criteria to be diagnosed with mEDS. To fulfill the diagnostic criteria, one must meet either major criterion number 1 along with another major criterion, or major criterion number 1 along with three minor criteria. The major criterion include congenital muscle hypotonia and or muscle atrophy that improves with age, proximal joint contractures, particularly in the knee, hip, or elbow, hypermobility of distal joints such as the wrist, ankle, toes, and fingers. Minor criteria include soft, doughy skin, atrophic scarring, motor developmental delay, and myopathy on examination of a muscle biopsy. The way that I fit into this diagnosis criteria is by meeting all 3 major criterion and several of the minor criterion. In my case, I meet the major criterion number 1, which is required for diagnosis due to very mild but present muscle weakness that began with my primary symptoms in 8th grade, and that progressively got worsened over time, but then gradually improved with my age. Simple tasks such as buttoning shirts and zipping zippers were difficult for me, and I lost a lot of muscle tone that I had built in my younger years through dancing and physical activity. Despite feeling quite weak, my case is relatively mild and somewhat different than what is seen in some of the literature of mEDS criteria, as a lot of cases are diagnosed in early childhood due to congenital muscle hypotonia. But I had a typical childhood and was well functioning and met all of my milestones. My issues really began during my tween and early teenage years. These things tend to improve with age. So I have noticed this with myself over the past year or two. I've noticed a significant improvement in my ability to perform daily tasks and build muscle tone. For context, I am about to turn 24, and it's been 11 years since I first began experiencing major medical issues. So while I did have a period of time where I did have a more severe muscle weakness, that has actually improved over the last several years, which is pretty consistent with what they are seeing in the literature. Next, I meet major criteria number 2 due to proximal joint contractures in my hips. I've never had much mobility in my hips, even as a dancer. I was never able to do the middle splits anywhere near to close, or raise my legs as high or in the same ways as the other dancers could. My hips just don't move the same way. While meeting both of those major criteria, I also meet major criteria number 3. I have hypermobility in my wrists, ankles, fingers, and toes, which means I meet all 3 major criterion. Regarding the minor criteria, I meet minor criteria number 1 and 2. I have soft, doughy skin and some atrophic scarring. Not all of my scars, but 1 or 2. However, I do not meet minor criteria number 3 and 4. I did not experience any muscle or motor developmental delays as a child. I met all of my expected milestones and was healthy in developmentally. Additionally, I haven't had a muscle biopsy, so I cannot confirm whether or not I have myopathy, so I do not meet those 2 criteria. Some of the major symptoms and comorbidities that I've experienced with myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, are autoimmune disorders, and then the classic dysautonomia, mast cell activation syndrome, and gastrointestinal issues that you do see with HEDS. I've noticed that my presentation, as well as the presentation of my sister and mother, closely align with the typical manifestations of hypermobility type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, particularly when it comes to the comorbidities and related disorders. I will be creating a couple more videos based on just this realm of subjects, specifically because this video is a little bit more of an overview of the diagnostic criteria and my journey to diagnosis. Before I close out this video, I'd like to mention a few final points. Myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is extremely rare, and there's still limited understanding and knowledge of the presentation and symptoms, which means there's also very little guidance on effective management. I've been exploring research studies specifically on mEDS, but in the meantime, I follow the management guidelines for hypermobility type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as that's kind of where my symptoms most align towards. And that's the approach I used for many years, and I found it helpful. Like many other types of connective tissue disorders, treatment primarily focuses on symptom management and management of comorbidities. Given that this diagnosis is relatively new to my family, I'm confident that over time, as medical knowledge progresses, we will continue to learn and refine the best strategies for managing my symptoms, as well as a more understood view of the typical mEDS presentation. I thank you so much for watching this video and taking time to learn about my experience with myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's been a long and challenging journey, but sharing it with you all has been a very important step in raising awareness and understanding about this rare condition. If you or someone you know is living with mEDS, EDS, or a connective tissue disorder, or any other type of chronic illness, just know you're not alone. Our stories matter, and they do help the people around us who are going through similar struggles. If you found this video helpful, please give my video a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more of this content, please subscribe. If you have any questions or want to share your own experiences, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. I'd love to hear from you, as I've never met anybody else with mEDS before or after my diagnosis of it. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.